Like Don Bradman and Farlap, Ron Barassi is a household name, a name that's echoed far beyond the annals of Australian rules football. But his record as player and coach is phenomenal. He began his professional career at 17 in 1953 for his beloved Melbourne club. By the time he'd hung up his boots 15 years later, he was captain coach at Carlton. He coached his last AFL game for the Sydney Swans in 1993. In that 40-year span, which included a 7-year break from the game, he'd been involved in 17 grand finals for 10 premierships. They included his 1977 triumph coaching North Melbourne through 2 grand finals to a premiership flag. His was a tough, take-no-prisoners approach on the field and on the sideline. But given his own start in life, that was no surprise. Now 74 and still going strong, Ron Barassi is the subject of a fascinating biography written by sports writer Peter Lawler, and I caught up with Ron Barassi in Melbourne. Ron Barassi, Australians love their heroes and their legends. What's it been like for you living in that kind of spotlight, that kind of pressure, with that kind of expectation, building up over 50 years?
Well, I had a good teacher who was also a very well-known Victorian, Norm Smith. I lived with him for 3 years and he was the coach. It's a good way of getting a game, live with a coach. He, very early in my football career, made sure that I kept my feet on the ground in such a way that the message really got home. So I've tried to do that ever since. So it's been a nice journey, the stuff you're talking about, but I've made sure that I remain a person.
I suspect other people have spent far more time in that regard reflecting on you than you might have on yourself. Your father's death in the Second World War has obviously played on your mind over the years, probably more with you as an adult growing older than as that very young, raw boy. But how did that loss affect you?
Well, as a kid I got over it pretty quickly, I think, but it's amazing nowadays, and it has been the case for the last maybe 20 years. I feel it, sometimes I feel it when I allow myself to, if I'm watching a war film or something like that, I really, I could finish up just crying. I don't often do that, not that I'm ashamed of it, by the way, but it's a bit embarrassing sometimes. You've got to be a bit careful, so it can be controlled. But I've been trying to get hold of some psychoanalysts to say, well, why is this so that as I'm getting older I'm missing my father more, or missing the fact that I didn't have a father?
Do you think maybe it's chickens coming home to roost in a way, that maybe as that young boy you suppressed it all, your way of dealing with it was to hide the grief even from yourself? And I'm no psychoanalyst.
No, I'm just going to say you psycho. That would make sense, yes. But I mean, that's the cards I've been dealt, and I've tried to do my best with them.
Was the die cast for you as a footballer because your father had played for Melbourne before you and been one of the first in the club to die in the war, which I imagine would have heightened the emotional connection between you and the club and between the Barassi name and the club?
Oh, yes. Well, Melbourne were a great club, and a great club doesn't do spectacular things on the field unless it's very strong off the field, and part of that strength off the field during those years was that they looked after widows such as my mother and people who'd helped them and played with them. So they were a very well-run club in that respect. So I grew up a young demon, so to speak.
You've been quoted as saying that you preferred coaching to playing. Can you put the two in context?
Yes, I put that question to about 8 coaches around a dinner table one night, and they all said the same thing, except one who was 50-50. And I think it's because the old saying, the more you put into something, the more you get out, and a coach puts in more than a player, not physically, naturally. So I think that's the reason.
Because you're living the game every waking minute, I suppose,
just about,
over the course of a season.
24/10, so to speak.
By the same token, I would have thought there would have been no feeling that a coach could have like that of a player who's played in a grand final and won and been an intricate part of that win.
Well,
with the roar of the crowd.
having experienced both, in fact more of one than the other, I still think that the coach, I mean, a whole year's effort goes into that joyous jump you have at the end of when the siren goes and you won.
Your methods as a coach are legendary, not just in the style of play, but also your tough, take-no-prisoners approach, the explosive temper.
Darryl, you are a I'll tell you why. You've got the bloody football game beaten. You've come down here not concentrated. The ball goes out towards the Carlton small man. You stayed back with your man. You could have got to the Carlton small man, but I know I'm going to protect myself.
How much of that toughness was calculated? How much was just the natural way you approached the job, your instinctive way of doing it?
Much more instinctive than put on. Because if you put on as a coach, well, after a bit of experience with you, the team, he's putting on his act again. They don't take notice. So that I can remember telling a little fiblet once to the guys in a grand final, and to get a reaction, and I got the reaction which was, "You are kidding, Ron," or "kidding, coach," because I said, "Win or lose, I'm proud of you. That's not me, you know." And as soon as I said that, that was just a thing I threw in to just test them, you know.
So your own philosophy came right back at you.
Yeah, but I knew it would. But you do want to. But if I'd done that a lot of times, you'd
have been pinged.
Yeah. It wouldn't have had the effect that you wanted and needed.
Do you ever worry now about how those tirades were impacting on players, or did you ever worry at the time even, or did you take the view that if they weren't tough enough to cop it, then they weren't going to make it on the football field either?
Well, there would be a little bit of that thinking in it, but they soon realised that whilst I blew up occasionally, after the thing was over, I'd forgotten about it.
Perhaps your most famous year as a coach, 1977, when you drew and replayed at the grand final from Collingwood and won. It seems you always sought the right words for the occasion. In that year, when you declared, "Nobody has ever won a premiership from this position. These are the games you should really love to be in, because that's the essence of the contest, isn't it, to fight back from behind." There's a sense that you fired best with your own back to the wall, is that right?
Probably, yes. Yes. It's an extra reason to try and lift yourself, because you're actually behind on the scoreboard because you're not being your normal self, so you've got to lift yourself back to that. Because most teams that get to grand finals, they're pretty good teams normally, so if you're down, it's because you've let yourself down.
You were running a Melbourne pub at the age of 60 when you were persuaded to come back and try to rescue the Sydney Swans from collapse in 1993. The challenge was to put your money where your mouth was, because you'd been advocating going national with AFL from a very early age. How tough was that to do at that stage of your life? And as you say, for the first time in your life, full-time coaching.
Well, when I first heard the suggestion, I said, "Oh no, I've been out of it for 7.5 years," so that was a bit of a worry. But when I got to think about it, because I wanted to be the first coach in Sydney, well, that never happened because coaches can't come and go where and when they like. They can't do that, and I was booked up with another job of coaching. So I eventually got around to thinking about it, and I thought, no. So once I said yes to my head, well, I was really looking forward to it, because what a challenge it was, and boy, what a mess, it was disgraceful to think that an AFL top league team could get so low in all the things that were needed.
That was a reflection of the morale of the club and the state of the club, of the team.
Yes, it was. And it was a disgrace. Look, I think the way Sydney got going, they were the first side out of Victoria in the big time, so to speak. That was, I thought, was a brilliant idea. It should have been done much earlier than that, but it shouldn't have been done with so little support, you know.
So the club was a mess when you arrived. What was it like when you left 3 years later?
I think they knew what football was about and how to go about it in a better way than before. We got into the grand final.
The year after?
The year after, yeah. So I would have actually liked to have coached the next year, but I found out they wanted, and I agree with them, by the way, when I say them, the committee, that they needed someone for 3 or 4 years. Quite right. And I reckon I could only last 1 year, so I said, OK, no worries.
When you watched the Swans win their first grand final in 2005, is it true you cried?
Yes, yeah. Well, a lot of love went into that thing. It was just magic. Yeah, it was great. That's because football's you follow a game of football, you follow a team, and you see what the players are putting in. You know, you see the blood, sweat, and tears that they're going through. So you feel for the competitors.
The game is different now. Is it better?
It's certainly better in that if we, whenever I played or coached, played today, we would get absolutely annihilated. There's no doubt about that. So it is better from that point of view. But visually, to watch, I don't think it's as good as it was in the 70s and 80s, when I didn't play, by the way. It's too much. There's too much soccer influence, too much basketball influence, and too much rugby league influence. And to me, we will pay for that one day, because one of the great things about our game is it's so different.
Now, you walked the Kokoda Trail at 70, and you talked about a 450-kilometre bike ride to Outer Mongolia. Is this a refusal to grow old, or are you just a man who always needs a challenge in his life?
Well, I do like challenges, but they've got to be sensible. I haven't had time to do these sorts of things in my life before, and now I have. So, and the two so far, they've been fantastic. We've got a good group called OWW, once were Warriors.
Do you think you're finding out how to grow old gracefully, or are you...
No, I'm not interested in that.
Or are you going to be one of those who's not going to go gently into the night?
No, I won't go gently.
Ron Barassi, thanks for talking with us.
Good to be here, thank you.